Welcome. Today we're going to learn how to use trig functions in order to find missing sides of right triangles. So I'm going to basically kind of walk right through the IXL lesson you're going to be working on today. We have this right triangle here. We have the right angle. We have one of the angles given. We have, it looks like the length of the hypotenuse, and we're asked to find the length of TU, this length along here. What I recommend you do is make sure you have the three trig functions written down, that the sine of an angle is the opposite side over hypotenuse, the cosine of an angle is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent of an angle is the opposite over the adjacent. Also have a calculator. Make sure your calculator is in degree mode. So I hit mode and I make sure that I'm in degree mode, which I am. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, to solve this problem, I'm going to draw this little triangle on a separate sheet of paper so I can keep track of my angles and what I'm looking for. I know that this is 6, and I know that this angle here is 56 degrees, and I want to find, again, TU, which is this side over here. So I'm going to put this as just an x, an unknown x. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this angle and I'm going to label these three sides. In other words, across from the right angle makes this the hypotenuse. This side makes the angle of 56 with the hypotenuse, so that makes this my adjacent side. This is across from my angle, so this is my opposite. So it looks like I want to use the opposite side, my unknown, and my hypotenuse. Which trig function uses the opposite and the hypotenuse? Well, it's the sine function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the sine of 56 degrees is equal to this unknown side length x divided by the hypotenuse. Now I just use my calculator. I come over here and take the sine of 56 degrees, and I get 0.829 equals x over 6, and then I'll just multiply the 6 over, so that 0.829 times my 6 is going to be what that length of x is going to be. Here on my calculator, I just use that answer. I just hit times, which means I'm going to be using the previous answer. 6 equals a 4.97, right? So x is equal to 4.97, but it asked me to round the answer to the nearest tenth. Since this is a 7, I'm going to round that up. That becomes a 10, which makes that actually a 5.0. So I come over here and I type in 5 and I hit submit. So again, every problem is going to be very similar to this. For this one here, what I'm going to do, again, is I'm going to write down that triangle. I'm going to say this is my angle I know, 25 degrees. I know this side. Now I'm going to label this is my hypotenuse because it's across from my right angle. This will be my adjacent side because it forms angle 25 with the hypotenuse. This over here is my opposite, and it wants me to find the length of UV. UV is from here to here, so it's the adjacent side. So I'm going to look for this x value. Since I'm using the adjacent and the hypotenuse, because I know the hypotenuse, adjacent and hypotenuse, I'm going to use the cosine. So I'm going to do the cosine of 25 degrees is equal to my adjacent, which is x, over my hypotenuse, which is 7. Now I just, on my calculator, I just take the cosine 25 degrees. That gives me 0.906. 0.906 equals x over 7. So x is going to equal that 0.906 times my 7, because I'm just multiplying the 7 up. So on my calculator, I just times 7, and I get x is equal to 6.34. Again, it says to round to the nearest tenth, So I'm just going to round that to 6.3. So I come over here and I type in 6.3 and hit submit. And this process will just repeat. I'm going to draw this triangle, put my right angle in there, label this as 9, label this as 42. So again, I got my 9, my 42, my right angle. That makes this my hypotenuse. Since this is the angle, this side here forms angle 42 with 9. That makes this my adjacent. This is going to be my opposite. Now let's look to see which side it's asking me to find. It says find the length of JK. JK, again, that's my adjacent side, so it looks like I'll use cosine again. Cosine of 42 degrees is equal to the adjacent side, some unknown length x. Again, if you want to label it, say that's x, over the hypotenuse, which is 9. Then I come over to my calculator, take the cosine of 42. That's going to be 0.743 equals x over 9, or x is going to equal that 0.743 times 9, because I'm bringing the 9 over, so times 9, and I get 6.68 is equal to x. Round to the, whoops, you can't see that. Let me go up. There we go. Now you can see that. Going to round this value to the nearest tenth. The nearest tenth would be 6.7. So I come over here and type 6.7 and hit submit. All right. So hopefully this isn't going to be too difficult of a lesson. I'm going to jump up a little higher to make sure that you see one. Let's see if I can get this to go up a little bit really quickly. All right. I just want to make sure I do one like this one here, QS. That's going to be using the, well, yeah, let's do this one. And the reason I want to show you this one is sometimes you'll get a two-step expression. So for instance, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down that triangle on a separate sheet of paper. And I'm going to label the parts that are given. I have my right angle, I have this length as side 4, and I have this as my 56 degrees. And it looks like I want to find QS. QS means I'm looking for the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse, I'm going to label that X. Now, since this is the side that forms the 56 degree angle with the hypotenuse, that makes that my adjacent, and this is my opposite. So I'm going to use which trig function that uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Well, I come back here and I look for the one that uses the adjacent and hypotenuse. That's going to be the cosine. So I'm going to do the cosine of 56 degrees is equal to the adjacent, which is 4, over the hypotenuse, which is x. So again, I'm going to now take my calculator to find that cosine of 56 degrees. So I do the cosine of 56, and I get 0.559 equals 4 over x. Now this is what I mean by a two-step equation. My variable's underneath. I don't just I can't times this by 4. Don't times it, that'd be wrong. I have to bring the x over, get the x out of the denominator. So what I'm going to do is times both sides by x first, and that gets me a 0.559 times x equals my 4, and then x is going to equal 4 divided by 0.559. So that took a couple steps. I had to get the x out from the denominator, and then I had to divide that decimal over that I got when I took the cosine of 56. So over here on my calculator now, I'm going to go 4 divided by my 0.559. I'm going to go a little further just to be safe. Hit enter, and I get x is 7.153. But again, it asked me to round to the nearest tenth. So that's going to be 7.2 because this is a 5. This is going to, oh, you're having a hard time seeing that. Sorry, there we go. 7.15, since this is a 5, that's going to go up to a 2 since I'm rounding it to the nearest tenth. And I type in 7.2, and hopefully this time it will submit, and that is right. Again, if you have any questions on how to do this, please email me or log on during my office hours at 1 o'clock, and I will help you in any way that I possibly can.